Welcome back, everyone. Today I will be testing the Acasom, Raygnal, and Uptronics amplifiers against each other. Please note that Uptronics is not suitable for Helium without a circulator. For each test, I will be using the Acasom cavity filter, Acasom bias T that was provided, and 6 dBi McGill omnidirectional antenna. For this test, I'm going to use my living room. AirSpy Mini is connected to my PC, and using long cables I can easily connect to the cavity filter and amps, and then finally to the 6 dBi McGill omnidirectional antenna on my balcony. This just makes things a lot easier in terms of swapping cables in and out. Before starting the test, I decided to take some baseline numbers. I'm currently using a VNA to transmit a signal so that we can capture what we have on the screen, so that we can see the peak, the noise floor, and the SNR values. So I'll make sure that the same test is carried out for all of the tests we are going to do. In order to make these videos a little shorter, I have pre-recorded most of the testing. So what you're seeing is the testing I've carried early in the day, so that you don't have to sit here for hours and hours me trying to compare different numbers. Right now, this is the Acasom without cavity. We can easily see the noise floor level that we are seeing, and SNR value, and then the peak. You can see that the signal is quite constant, so that means that hopefully we can get some accurate numbers we can compare against the others. Earlier in the video, you may have noticed that the signal was quite murky. This is probably down to interference or something else, which I can't seem to get my fingers on. This is Acasom with cavity. You can see that the waterfall has changed massively. Before the waterfall was murky, the noise level was oscillating. Now it's actually a bit more stable. Our signals, easily noticeable. At this part of this video, I'm not sure what happened, but the signal has recovered, and obviously I will not be using the earlier values for the testing. Again, I'm capturing separately the lowest and the highest, and I will share the data sheet end of the video, and I will link in the description so you can check the values for yourself. This is Raygnal with no cavity. It is the adjustable amplifier. You can see the waterfall is not as murky as Acasom without cavity. However, there is an interference that we can see is ever so slightly on the right hand side. I'm not sure what it is, but you can easily see that there is interference coming in. Same as others, I will be capturing the highest and the lowest, and this is all based on the noise floor that I will be capturing. It's quite time consuming to recording these on paper. Raygnal with cavity. Like Acasom, as soon as we use the cavity, the interference we had before is gone, and our waterfall has a solid color, which means that the amplifier is working, but also the cavity is doing its job. We can see that the signals are quite strong. On the left hand side, these are beacons that the amplifier is picking up, and AirSpy is interpreting. can't pronounce the word. One different thing here is that Raygnal seems to be picking up the signal a lot stronger compared to what we've seen before. We can see that the color of the beacon coming from the VNA is a lot stronger, it's yellower, and the peak is higher as well. And this is the same test as the others. Uptronics is a amplifier, is a preamplifier with no TX bypass. Please do not use this for Helium unless you're using a circulator and know what you're doing. This is just for purely on comparison that I wanted to use Uptronics, which is a cheaper amplifier. And like Raygnal, we had the same interference before. The signals, again, is quite strong. We are getting a solid yellow line. And the noise level seems to be all right. And this is without cavity. And finally, Uptronics with cavity. Like before, cavity helps a lot, especially in my area where I'm in East London. I have a lot of telecom towers right next to me, and the signals that I'm receiving are cleaner, no interference. I can see a lot of strong beacons. Everything seems to be working well. The only difference from the previous one, our signal seems to be weaker when we're using cavity. I'm not sure if this is something or how Uptronics work. Our peak is relatively the same, but the waterfall is slightly different. And now for the grand finale. And before I share the results, I was actually quite surprised by the initial testing, especially the testing I've done without cavity and with cavity. We do have two clear winners, and from my previous video, they say that Raygnal was creating less noise. What I would like to say is that I think my previous testing was a little flawed. I was using an indoor antenna. I believe my initial testing methodology was not correct. So I would like to apologize for that if I was spreading fake news. However, let's take a look at the results and see who is the winner. So I have put this spreadsheet together so that I can share my data with you guys. I will publish this and put it in the description so that you can take a look at it. So the first line is the baseline that I took, which is the results based on just the antenna and then just kind of comparing the best peak that we received. These are all in dB, and then the worst, and then I have the average. And I've done the exact same test for all three amplifiers with cavity and no cavity. These are the dB numbers, and this is the baseline. So this is kind of plus 9.7 from the baseline. So just kind of gives us an idea that Acasom with cavity, at best, there was an improvement for the peak, 9.7 decibels, and worse was 8.10, and kind of worked out the average. What I want to show is some examples. You can analyze yourself. Clearly, initially, I want to talk about the highest number first, which is Raygnal with cavity. This amplifier had a whopping 12.3 decibel amplification. Peak is the highest point of the signal in our waterfall. In this case, for peak, higher is better. So in this case, minus 66.3 is better than minus 78.6. Raygnal did quite well with no cavity, which is similar. Acasom with no cavity is kind of the same. Raygnal with no cavity. And the clear winner, though, in this case, is Raygnal with no cavity. Now, we can take a look at that. Uptronics did work for a preamp that's TX16. We only got 6.7 from the baseline. In terms of the peak, this wasn't as great. Acasom did quite well. Again, this is Acasom was RX17, I believe, and Raygnal is also 17 using the dip switch. And you can see that each amp slightly amplified differently. Now, this is not the numbers that we are really interested. We can adjust these numbers, especially on the Raygnal, but the bit that we would like to compare, and it's kind of found a little bit of interesting, is the noise floor. For a baseline, average was minus 105.85 dB. Comparing it with the 3 amps, Acasom was the clear winner in terms of having the lowest noise floor. The best was actually even better than our baseline by 0.3 decibels. And again, this is within the error margin. Again, my recordings is not proof that Acasom with cavity is going to improve your baseline. Well, it just means that Acasom with cavity works quite well. However, the story is completely opposite, which we all know, is that Acasom without cavity is horrible, is without a doubt the worst results we get. So if you do have an Acasom amplifier, please go and buy a cavity filter, not a SAW filter. SAW filters are not so great. Get yourself a cavity filter, because without cavity, our noise floor was around average 6.4 decibels higher than our bass. Now, in second coming, Raygnal with cavity was around 0.75 average. So the difference is less than a decibel, but it's, again, this could be within the error margin. But Acasom did quite well. Well, it did quite surprise me. I'm not sure if this is because I've modified this slightly, but Acasom was the clear winner in terms of having the bass noise. Now, the second thing that surprised me is Uptronics. Again, seem to have a great noise level with cavity. However, the noise floor without cavity was around 3.10 decibels higher, whereas Raygnal without cavity is 2.34. Again, these are all within error margin. All these amps work pretty much similar with cavity, so the difference are marginal. However, the only difference I can tell you is that the biggest loser in terms of the noise floor is Acasom with no cavity, which most of us expected and knew. And when it comes to the SNR value, which is based on the peak and the noise floor difference, our baseline was around 27.40 decibels for average. This is the SNR value. If you look at these numbers, you can see that Raygnal with cavity had a whopping 11.3 decibels average. Best was 11.9. Now, Acasom with cavity did quite well. I only had one value that was around 10, but with the worst, it brought it down. Acasom seems to fluctuate a lot in terms of its noise level and the peak. And out of the all testing, Acasom with no cavity came last. It did worse than Uptronics, and Raygnal with cavity is around 6.15. Again, if we compare the numbers without cavity, Raygnal seems to be winning. Actually, apologies. Uptronics with no cavity is the clear winner, which was quite surprising. So these are the results, and you can check them yourself and double check my numbers. Let me know if I made any mistakes. Now, let me come to the winners. Using the previous data points, I have highlighted the average numbers that we received. Acasom, no cavity. Our peak was around 10.65 decibels higher than our base, which is quite respectable considering our amplification is 17 RX. And however, this amplification increased our noise floor by 6.4 decibels. That's quite a big increase in terms of noise. And that brought our SNR value to 4.2 decibels. And Raygnal with no cavity seems to have performed less than Acasom in terms of amplification. Raygnal is 17 RX2. We have amplified the signal by 8.55 decibels. However, Raygnal seems to create less noise, which is around 2.35 decibels, and our SNR value is 6.15 decibels. Now, in this result, Uptronics with no cavity is the clear winner. Our noise is around 3.1 decibel, which is quite respectable. However, the 11.55 decibel increase brought our SNR value to 8.5 decibels, which is a great result for a preamp that has no TX bypass. Can do great in terms of amplifying the signal, creating low noise, and gives us a better SNR value based on that. Now, the test with cavity filters. Acasom with cavity had the lowest noise, around actually improved the noise level by 0.05 decibels. Again, these are all within the error margin. With cavity, Acasom amplified the signal 8.9 decibels. Now that's, if you compare it to the previous one, Acasom amplified the signal by 10.65 decibels, but had higher noise level. In this case, it amplified it less. However, then it created less noise. That gave it a 8.95 decibels SNR difference. Now, Raygnal, which is, as I mentioned previously, is the clear winner in terms of amplifying the signal 12.05 decibels versus 8.55 decibels without cavity. Now, with cavity, our noise level was increased by 0.75 decibels, which is quite respectable considering we have amplified our signal by massive 12 decibels and created a difference of 11.3 decibels SNR compared to our baseline. Uptronics, however, seem to have done the opposite. I was actually expecting Uptronics to be the winner with cavity. However, with cavity, Uptronics did much worse in terms of the amplification. We have reduced the amplification from 11.552 down to 6.3 decibels. Now this 6.3 decibels is the baseline. So it's 6.3 is the increase from our baseline. To sum it all up, we do have two clear winners. Uptronics with no cavity is without doubt is the winner with no cavity, and Raygnal is the winner with cavity. The difference in noise level with cavity is pretty much the same. Again, I think Raygnal is creating a little extra noise, but that overcompensated by increasing the amplification by comparing to Acasom around 3 decibels, give or take, which is quite impressive considering, you know, difference 11.3 SNR value for the same constant signal that we've been receiving compared to Acasom with cavity. So this is Acasom version 1. So I have not tested the new super minor one. I'm trying to get my hands on it. I would like to run all these stands against each other using the same methodology so that we always compare against the same results. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this useful. See you guys on the next one.